Hello everyone, my name is Pierre Talbot. I'm the president of Techidem, and today I will present you the controller over here that's mainly used for pleasure boat, but it could be used for any kind of application. It could be university project, a special R&D, industrial project. It could be obvious. You will find this a lot of feature at very low cost, so very interesting for you. Um, Tikidem also work on a hydrofoil project. It's a long-term project. I'm not going to talk about that today. And also do a consultation. So my background is electronic software development, electronic circuit design. I have worked in the past on the architecture of satellite network constellation, avionics, test product, video product, telecommunication product. I've done many ASICs for integrated circuit, and I'm bringing all this experience to you to come up with that controller. So, controller normally would sit in the middle of your boat, middle anywhere, but the diagram here it shows that it's at the heart of the monitoring of your boat. So it would connect to your engines with all the pressure, temperature, alarm, check engine, the RPM. It would control the bilge pump, the blower, the lights. If you have an MFD like here, this is an Axiom from Raymarine, it would be able to communicate and send message to that unit. It would connect. This is a Wi-Fi router, so it would provide the by connecting to this, and if you're connected to the Wi-Fi of the marina, would be able to get message when you are away from the boat. Or if this unit is if it had to be a cellular connection, you would be able to receive that um, through your cellular connection. So this box has different features. It has a lot of analog input. We'll see that later on. RPM input, PWM shunt or current. It has relays. It has the support the NMEA 2000 connections. And with the CPU and all the GUI, you have all the user interface to monitor your boat and control. It has IMU, which is a digital compass for the heading. It has the roll and pitch, or the angle of the boat would be measured. It can drive the LED, and we'll see later on. So it really does put a lot of feature in this. So, what does it mean for you? Then that means that you have an integrated box over here. So instead of having to purchase separately a unit for analog input, sometimes require many devices. Having a box for relay, having a box for, let's say, digital compass, having a box for fuel flow. If you start to put all these boxes together, that makes a system that takes a lot of space in your boat. It would be expensive, and it would require more work to integrate all of this and make all these boxes to work together. While this box, everything is integrated. So what it means at the end is that you will pay much less than the competition. Um, from all the companies that I'm tracking, it's about half the price of the between half of the price and a quarter of the price. So it's a huge difference if we compare that to other companies. So it's a very flexible system. You can customize that as you want. If you have one engine, two engine, depending on the type of equipment and sensor that you have, everything can be it's flexible. If it's you have an Ethernet connection, you would receive the messaging. We'll see later on the advanced feature that this thing does provide, because not only to display the value of a sensor, but it also monitor with different rules. And if you have an MFD, then you will be able to connect with that. So at the end, less device, less price, whole piece of the puzzle. So it's a great product. It's IP65, so in a boat environment where there's humidity and water around, it's everything inside will stay dry. So it's very important to have this feature. This unit right now, it might be difficult to see, but there's two slave board inside, so there are more connector under. But it could be purchased as a single board, so a single decker, double decker, one board, two board. So depending on your need, this box can have a lot of features inside. What you would expect for the GUI is something like this, and we see the same thing on the iPad right there, but it could be an Android tablet, it could be your laptop if you have one in your boat or in your lab if it's not a boating application. But we see here different examples of GUI where we have the all the engine parameters. We have the battery current voltage. Right here, it's only one bank, but all the bank would be shown. You would be able to have digital switching, so be able to turn on and off different equipment, and you know exactly each one would have a color coding saying the status. So, and everything can be customized. So if you have one engine, two engine, you would customize the display as you want. One of the very, very important feature is the unique master status indicator. It looks simple, but it does a lot of things behind it. So if you look right here, you'll see there's a green button. And what it is you would have that inside your boat. On my boat, I have one on the helm, one at the flybridge, and there are hundreds of rules that are checking what's happening on the boat. And if there's a warning that is raised, this thing will start to blink blue. If it's an alarm, it will start to blink red with a loud noise. I press the button to stop the noise, and then I go in the log page. I see what happened, and then I would fix the problem if I can. But all saying that it's monitoring everything in real time in your boat. So, for example, if you are cruising and then the voltage of the battery is not high enough, that means that your alternator is not working anymore. So it would raise an alarm for that. If you start your engine and after 5 seconds you don't have some pressure, the oil pressure, it would give you a warning saying there's something wrong. It might be that you're leaking oil. So all of these things are being monitored. So if you go on a website, you'll find a document that it's an example of a two-engine boat, my boat, and you'll see that all the rules that are being done. So it's at some point you will cruise, you will need to look at all the gauges and make sure that everything is fine. The idea is you have one place to look, or if there's something happening, you have a sound. A buzzer that will tell you there's something that happening, and then you would react. So very useful feature. It's like a big check engine for everything that you have in your boat. Not only the engine, but the electrical system and anything that you can think of. So this box has each board, because right now there's two slave board. It could be one, but each slave board has 8 relay. Each relay can support 16 volt, 16 amp. It has a voltage sensor and a current sensor. So this is very useful because if you don't sense any voltage when you you close the relay, that might be that the fuse is blown. If you close the relay and there's no current, that could mean that the let's say a blower is not working anymore, or there's a wire that has been disconnected. So it's useful. Give you an example: the bilge pump, where it would have a floating device in parallel with the relay. Um, when it starts, every time it starts the bilge, the system would tell you how long it has run and when was the last time it has run. So at some point, If you start to see that the bilge pump is running more often, might be there starting to be a leak in the boat. So it's good to have this. So every relay has voltage and current sensing. If the current becomes too high, we could react like a breaker and turn off the circuit. We have a first group of 13 analog pin where you could connect any type of sensor, pressure, voltage, current, you name it, fluid level, water level, rudder, and it could these pin could behave as analog or digital. That's not a problem. If whether your sensor is powered or not. If it's not powered, it becomes like a resistive type. This is supported. So normally one slave board would be enough for a two-engine boat. In my boat, I have two slave board, and because I'm monitoring a lot of things. So again, on the website, you would have the example of my boat. Each input support up to 15 volt. If there's any spike up to 29 volt, it would be fine. And any special sensors, like if you want to monitor the current of the shore power, it would be possible to do this with a unit like this. There's an additional 6 input pin that can either be analog input or be a load driver. For example, if you have a windlass and you want to control the relay over there because it's power relay, you would be able to do this with the load driver. You could generate pulse with this. We have 6 pin to control things like this. This is a LED strip that can be red, green, blue, or any color. So we have 6 pin for that. Here we have an example of the lights that we put on the boat, and you can have nice light around the boat. So it's possible. 2 pins for RPM to measure the RPM of the boat. And if it's not being used for RPM, then it becomes an analog input. If you have devices outside that require serial communication, we have UART. The pulse counter is interesting for example, the fuel flow generate pulse. We have inputs for that. And after that, we have outputs for 3.3 volt and 5 volts. If you have sensors that require to be powered, we can do this. And it does support 2 shunt. We see an example over here that can measure a lot of current for your battery bank. So depending on the model, it can go up to 500 amps. So inside the box, there is a master board, which is a Raspberry Pi. It's a Linux environment. So if you have any special things that you want to develop or software you want to add, it's an open environment. So it's up to you to play with this. But in the case of the boating application, there is OpenPlotter, which group of tools, and they have SignalK. That's a bridging between the Node-RED environment that is being used for the GUI and the Anime 2000, so it can relay messages between the two. If needed, we can add connectors. For example, in my boat, I have a USB connector, which is also IP65 for the humidity, so everything stays dry inside. But the USB, I'm using that for the GPS unit, which is connected over here. So it receives a GPS, even though the Axiom does provide that. It's more reliable to have a unit on the top of the boat. It support Bluetooth. If you have video and you want to drive a monitor, this is possible. We have high-level feature. I mentioned before all the monitoring, all the rules that are grouped together to provide a single status. We also auto trim tab. This is currently under development, where by controlling the valve and the pump of the trim, and with the IMU sensor inside that knows the angle of the roll and pitch, we can level up the boat automatically. This is one thing. We see here in the presentation the graph of the fuel flow. So we can generate graph where we see how much the fuel consumption versus RPM or versus the speed. So it's type of feature we do. Animate 2000 messages. We would know everything, what all types of message that goes on the bus. So if you connect a sensor, you would be able to see is it there, and then be able to debug that. So a lot of configuration and diagnostic features. And finally, the connector spreadsheet. So with the box, I would provide to you it's a Google spreadsheet. But in there, all pins has its description, and you will know that, for example, on that relay, you would be able to assign that to a specific need. Example, the USB connector, I have connected that to a specific relay, and then that sensor. So you update that based on your need. And all the color is the wire of the cables. So after that, you print that, you put that on the side of the unit, and it becomes very useful if you have to debug something or you want to add a new connection in your boat. That would be your reference card. So it's very useful to have. So that it's a quick overview. We have other videos that goes more into details for the GUI and the different sensor, and if it's not there, eventually it will be added in the days to come. If you want to have some specific topic to be explained, let me know. Send me emails, and if you have any comments, special needs, let me know. I will be more than happy to answer your question. And thank you for looking at this video.